Hello, welcome to my first segment on a Facebook Live post for the Washington County Cooperative Extension Service. I'm Dennis Morganson, the agent for horticulture here, and today I'm going to talk about transplanting and or repotting and taking some of the little pups or babies off of an aloe plant. As you can see, there's a pretty large aloe plant here. It's kind of gotten way too big for its pot. A few of the plants, or a few of the leaves broke off on the way in this morning. You can see it's a pretty big leaf. And you can see this little squishy, juicy gel that's inside of that leaf. That's the stuff that people use for burns, and they use in cosmetics and all those kinds of things. A few little interesting things about the aloe. There's numerous varieties of these out there. They all make pretty good house plants. They don't need, they need bright but indirect sunlight. They don't like full sun usually. But they are native only to the Arabian Peninsula. Most of us think these may be in Mexico and all these places, but they have naturalized all around the world. But their original location is the Arabian Peninsula, and you think about they're from a hot, dry climate. They're a succulent. You know, they're not cactus. They have little barbs, but they're not cactuses. They don't have thorns. But their way to get through dry times is they have this gel in their leaf, and whenever it's wet, that gel plumps up with moisture, and then whenever they don't have water, it just kind of dries back down. So, you know, you probably grew up with one of these aloes in the house, or your grandmother or somebody had one. This is a rather large one. I kind of like the large ones because it takes less leaf to use for a burn or for a sunburn or those kinds of things. This particular aloe is probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, but it won't even set up anymore. I had to have a rock in it to set it up. So I'm not even going to set it up right now. It's just too big for that. I am going to take it out of the container, or try to. I may have to break the container to get it out. At this point, it's pretty root bound. And as you can see, there's a lot of babies in there. There, I did get it out. So, not a very big pot for a small, or not a very big pot for a large plant. But whenever you want to separate these out, you kind of have to manhandle them a little bit. So you just kind of get in here and break some of these babies off of there. And you can see they separate pretty easily. Don't worry, you get just a little bit of a root system on these, they're fine. Remember, they're succulent, so they have a lot of moisture and a lot of food stored in these leaves. So you can just separate these out and repot these. And you can see there's going to be a bunch of these. So there's 3 or 4 there, several more. And this is just getting started into this base of this plant. Even these smallest ones, you can repot those if you want more of these. So we'll just get in here, keep pulling these off. All of these are fine. Plenty of root system there for these to grow again. Even these larger ones, still plenty of root system. I like to get in and separate these every 2 or 3 years just because I kind of like the look of just one aloe plant in a pot. You can see a lot of old dried leaves under here. Get rid of that. And you can see even some of these babies are rather large coming off the bottom of this. Pretty big aloe just to be a pup off of a mother plant, but you can transplant all of these and have lots more. Here's one that wouldn't make it. If you did well, it might make it, but it might not. It doesn't really have any root system. It likely would root. We'll probably just toss that. We don't need it. So we'll get back down here on this side and get some more of these babies off of here. Or pups is what you see terms called pups a lot for little plants off of a larger plant. But you can see how these can be pretty root bound, or really pretty thick in their pot because of all these pups, which, you know, you've got pretty big plants coming off these. It's just pups. So this plant coming in, I did break a few leaves off of it because it weighs, in the pot, it weighed about 50 pounds, and it wouldn't set up just because it outgrew its pot too much. So we'll just get all these little pups off of here, and we'll be left with our larger plant here. So we've got a pretty good stack of pups there. So you could bury this a little bit deeper, which is probably what I'm going to do. You don't go too much because you don't want that to rot, but I am going to take off some of this extra dried leaves and stuff off here just to get it up and clean it up a little bit for whenever I repot it. So I like to put succulents, aloes, those kinds of things in terracotta pots for a couple of reasons. Terracotta helps the moisture wick away, which if they get too wet, they'll dry a lot quicker. The other thing about these is they're heavier. These plants are heavy, so a heavier weighted pot is going to help these set up a little bit. I'm not going to need a lot of soil on the bottom of this, I'm going to put maybe just a few inches of soil on the bottom of this, but I'm going to use, it doesn't matter what brand you use, I'm just going to use the Cactus formula. It's for succulents, basically. It's a fast draining soil mix. It's got a lot of sand in it. You can mix your own. I've used regular potting soil, and it's been just fine. But I will say you have to watch the watering if you don't use a fast draining soil mix. So just a few. This has got a lot of sand in it mixed in. You could do a half sand, half regular potting soil mix and probably be just fine. So we got our large aloe plant here, and we're going to plump him in this pot. We're going to try to get him a little bit deeper. And don't worry if it's still sticking up a little bit. I mean, these plants, they come from arid conditions. It doesn't matter. I don't like to get I wouldn't a wide bottom pot just because the plant is so heavy. And you can see how that's going to be. And I will warn you now, this aloe will come back and make a lot more pups, and it'll fill this pot. And you'll just have to keep separating it like that. That's just part of the way, the nature of this plant, how it reproduces and makes a large cluster. So I'm going to go ahead and dump soil in there. Kind of move it around. Situate it. Now, this is going to be a little crooked in the pot because it was leaning, and I want to straighten it. So don't worry about this lean. It will straighten back up as it kind of settles in its pot. You probably can't even see me now. The plant. So, succulents and aloes are pretty low feeders. You don't need to feed these very much, especially not in the wintertime. I'll be honest with you, this plant here, I'll water it after it's potted in here. But the last few winters that this came in, I would bring it in the winter, set it in front of a bright indirect window, and I wouldn't water it the entire winter. Now, it would start to look a little shrivelly and kind of sickly by spring, but it didn't hurt it a bit. The leaves will not be as plump. They'll kind of shrivel, but the plant's fine. It can go through all that dry. The only reason I did that was just because I wanted it to kind of just sit there and not really grow a lot because I didn't want it to stretch. I don't like for them to stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting more soil around this plant. Firm it in really well. Some people like to put some pebbles or rocks around the base of this at the top, just to add a little more weight to the pot, which is fine. I may or may not do that later. Obviously, I don't have some here today, so I won't do that. But it's totally fine. You don't have to. It's up to you. It's whatever the look you like. You can do it that way. Some people like the look because it kind of makes it seem like it's in more of a desert landscape. A few things about aloes. Some people don't realize that they will eventually bloom, many of them. Somebody had one that bloomed, a smaller version of a smaller aloe, not one of these larger ones. And they were worried that the plant was going to die. Aloes are not like agaves and some of the other succulents. They don't die after they flower. They can flower and just keep growing. They'll just send out a flower spike. It'll die. They'll set seeds on it if you don't deadhead it. And you could even try planting the seeds. Most of us don't because it's just so much easier just to get these pups off there and have a new plant. So there's the plant. It's kind of large. It's going to just keep getting larger, but at least it can stand on its own now. Make sure that it's going to set up. So there it is. If anybody got any questions about growing aloes, give me a call here at the Washington County Extension Office. This plant here, I'll probably just set it in front of the window over here for the winter. Kind of let it just hang out, and it'll sit there. It won't grow a lot this winter because the days are going to get shorter. It won't get enough light. I would like to say that if anybody would like one of these pups from this aloe plant, which I'm going to scoot this out of the way now, I have plenty. So if you watch this video, share the video and then make a comment at the bottom. If you'd like one of these aloes, if you do that, stop by the extension office, and while we have them, you can get a free aloe plant and take home. You'll just get a pot and go ahead and pot him up when you get him home, and you'll have a free aloe plant. Thanks for watching.